Hi class, welcome back. Now we are going to have another new lesson, and this is about the characteristics of a good test, part 1. In our previous videos, we were able to discuss the difference between the psychological assessment and psychological testing, and also we were able to discuss what is psychological test. After that, we were able to discuss the history of psychological testing. Now it's time for us to identify the characteristics of a good test, and this is part 1. Alright, again, psychological test is a tool to gather behavior, behavior. Now let's define again what is psychological test in this context. A psychological test is the major and most commonly used instrument for the assessment of behaviors. Again, this is an instrument or a tool in psychological testing. Now, there are two types of psychological test. It can be standardized or non-standardized. In simple terms, a standardized test has an established norms. For example, the SAT, the Scholastic Achievement Test. It has an established norms, or it has a basis of a normal average performance against others. Later on, we will discuss more about norms in our next videos. Again, a standardized test or a standardized psychological test has an established norms. Now, we also have a non-standardized test. These are tests gauged to measure the student's knowledge of specific content. For example, a Spanish midterm. So as a non-standardized test is different from standardized test because the standardized test has norms, while non-standardized test doesn't have any norms. A non-standardized test can also be established by a teacher. For example, if you go to school, the quiz that was given by your teacher is considered non-standardized test, while the standardized test like the National Medical Admission Test, that's a standardized test, or the UP College Admission Test, that's also a standardized test. As you can see, standardized tests are the big ones, while the non-standardized tests can be given by your teachers through your class interaction. Again, that's the standardized test and non-standardized test. Now let's go in depth with the non-standardized test. A non-standardized test is one that allows for an assessment of an individual's abilities or performances, but doesn't allow for a fair comparison of one student to another. Indeed, a non-standardized test can still measure abilities or performance of an individual, specifically, for example, a student, but it doesn't allow a fair comparison to each other. That's why other people keeps on saying that school is not a good measure of how a person will perform in life. That's because in school, there are a lot of non-standardized tests. Because initially, a non-standardized test is just to gauge or to measure a performance of a student in a specific lesson. Basically, teacher-made tests are used to evaluate the progress of the students in school. However, the specific use of tests may vary from school to school and teacher or teacher. Like what I've mentioned earlier, a non-standardized test can be made by a teacher. This is just to measure or evaluate the progress of the students on the given lesson, like a simple quiz, or a long quiz, or the midterm exam. Those are non-standardized tests. These are teacher-made, just to measure one's knowledge on the given lecture. The test results can be used for students, teachers, and for other administrative purposes. These tests are very simple to use. Again, since non-standardized tests are often used in the school settings, can be used by the students once they graduate and once they wanted to go for employment, teachers to evaluate their students, and other administrative purposes. These are just simple tests. They are easy for the students. Now, teachers can assess the strengths and weaknesses of the students in these kinds of tests. Because again, this will measure one's knowledge on the lecture that the teacher gave. Tests are conducted continuously and children get immediate feedback. Because these non-standardized tests are shorter or sometimes longer, it can be given immediately by the teacher who made the test. Alright, teachers can understand the need for reteaching concepts and can decide remedial instructions. One of the good things or the benefits of this kind of test is that teachers can see the weaknesses of the students in a particular topic, and from there, the teachers can reteach the subject so they will have higher scores next time. Teacher-made tests devised by the teacher is to meet their various needs and directives. Again, the only goal of the non-standardized test in this case is for them or for the teachers to evaluate the performance of the student in the class. Tests are not so carefully and scientifically prepared. This is compared to standardized tests. Though the test or a non-standardized test was prepared very carefully by the teachers, it is different on how to prepare or yes, how difficult the standardized test is prepared. This one is based on the teacher's perspective only. The items of teacher-made tests are seldom analyzed and edited. Unlike in standardized tests, the test items will go a specific process just to get the most standard items of the test. The types of behavioral changes covered are often limited in scope. So that's why some people say that your test scores in school will not define who you are. It's because there are only behavioral there are only limited scopes of behavior that can be covered by this kind of test. Because again, the very purpose of a non-standardized test is to measure the student's ability or knowledge on the given topic or lecture. What are the limitations of non-standardized tests? So the first, tests are often ambiguous and unclear. Sometimes that's why some teachers give bonus points, because sometimes the items or the test itself is unclear to the students. Second, they are either too short or too lengthy. Too short, that's for the quizzes. Too lengthy, that would be for the major examinations in class. Tests do not cover the entire content. Yes, it will not cover everything. It will cover some specific contents, and sometimes they are very specific on the definitions. That's why some students tend to memorize than to understand the specific term instead of the concept. Supervision is not proper because sometimes quizzes or yes, there are sometimes surprise quizzes. So that's why supervision is not proper sometimes compared to a standardized test. A lot of scope for copying. Yes, there are a lot of opportunities for students to copy due to the non-standardization of the test. Conducted as rituals only. Yes, as you go to school, there would be a lot of non-standardized tests. Answer books not marked with care. So these are for the uh, the tests on that you can find uh, at the books. Now let's go to standardized tests. A standardized test is constructed by test experts or specialists. The test experts or specialists in psychology would be the registered psychometrician and or the registered psychologist. Yes, a registered psychometrician main goal or main purpose is actually to make psychological tests. That's why psycho registered psychometrician are considered as test experts. So in the field of psychology, again, the test experts or specialists who make the standardized test are the registered psychometrician and or the registered psychologist. Standardized test covers broad or wide areas of objectives and content. So it is not limited to any lecture because it covers objectives, a lot of objectives and content like IQ, emotional quotient, personality test, and a lot of more, which is not limited to lectures like the non-standardized test. Standardized test selection of items will be done very carefully, and the validity, reliability, usefulness of the rest is ascertained in a systematic way. So we can say that a standardized test is standard if they have validity, which the test measure what it purports to measure, reliability, the test items is consistent, usefulness, it is useful based on the norms or the normal average performance of the initial takers, and it and the way that it is conceptualized or arranged is systematic. The procedure of administration is also standardized. Also, only registered or allowed administrators are allowed to administer a standardized test. Let's continue. Test has clear directions, and it will be motivating, encouraging the students. So the test itself is very clear at the beginning because it has a standardized procedures, directions, and instructions. Also, it has a test manual. So from the start or the beginning of the test or the name of the test itself, it is clear that the test itself is standard, and it also has a test manual. Also, scoring key is provided. This standardized test cannot be scored just like the non-standardized test that is just simple as checking or right or wrong answer. In here, there is a specific scoring method that was given included in the test manual. Lastly, test manual provides norms for the test. It should be fixed. Again, norms is the average performance of the test in a specific group, age, or many more. The test manuals provide these norms. So it means that the test was already taken by specific group before. Standardized test has a specific direction for administering and scoring the test. Like what I've mentioned, it is all provided in the test manual. And also, before a person can administer a standardized test, they should undergo a very lengthy training from registered psychometrician or psychologist. Again, a standardized test in the field of psychology can only be administered by a registered psychometrician and or a registered psychologist. A standardized test consists of standard content and procedure. Like what I've mentioned a while ago, its content is standard, like for example, if it measures only IQ, the whole test will measure IQ. And also, the procedures of the test is very consistent throughout. Next, it provides standardized frame of reference determining individual performance. This is due to the norms of the test. The tests already have a norm. Again, norm is a normal average performance of the test. From the normal average performance of the test, this serves as the frame of reference of the test. That whenever someone or a participant uses the test, the norms will serve as the frame of reference. And then, last for this one, it is unbiased. The test should not place students at a disadvantage because of gender, ethnicity, language, or disability. The test itself, because it is standard, it will not be biased. It is culture fair. It will not bias anyone or get anyone offended, or someone's gender, ethnicity, language, or disability will not be a disadvantage for them to be successful at the test. The test is fair and impartial. So that's it for this topic. So there will be another part for this video. So I do suggest that you just watch that out. So if you have any questions, please let me know at our group chat at Messenger, or or you can just send me a DM. So thank you very much. I'll be seeing you again on our next video. Thank you. Bye for now.